Thank you guys for showing up. We have the incredible and inimitable co-founders of the Force of Nature team here with us. So Katie Forrester, Robby Sansom, and Taylor Collins. So thank you guys so much for joining us today. I think
there we go.
We were on mute, dang it. Hey guys, thanks for joining us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Awesome, guys. Well, we're going to wait just a beat for some other additional folks to come in and join us today. But in the meantime, I'd love to invite everyone to put in the chat where in the world that you are coming from, and as well as, a couple terms that maybe you describe yourself as a participant within the regenerative movement. So for myself, I'd say conservationist, activist, and aspiring farmer. And then if that's not too much, I'd also love to invite everyone. We've been enjoying this really, really beautiful practice of, there's so much that forward movement within the regenerative movement, but there's also so much more that can be done. So I'd love to hear from everyone an I wish statement, kind of that pie in the sky moonshot moment of what is possible. Like, what do you really wish to see? It can be simple as I wish that everyone was growing some piece of food for themselves in a garden, or I wish that, regenerative food options were more available in grocery stores worldwide. So go ahead and share those few things. Again, like where you're coming from in the world, if you're a farmer, a land steward, an activist, a consumer, and then also that I wish statement, if that feels good. And we'll just take a beat and hear some of those responses.
You guys want to share yours while everyone's thinking?
You do, go ahead.
Yeah, why don't you kick us off?
Okay, this just occurred to me as Tori was talking, but I wish we kind of have this mantra in our house. It's like the golden rule of food, and it's to feed others as you wish to be fed. And I wish that golden rule was adopted by everyone, because if you feed other people as you want to feed yourself and your family and your friends, well, the quality of the food, the sourcing, it's all dramatically improved. And there's a mindfulness and an intentionality behind where that food is coming from, how it was raised, how it was processed. And it just creates a beautiful, virtuous cycle where there's a lot of love in that food. And I wish everyone took that attitude and that spirit.
It'd be a lot more fun to go out to eat.
Oh yeah, Thanksgiving.
Thanksgiving would be more
Probably
fun.
Probably want to go to your Thanksgiving with your grandma.
Halloween would be fun.
Yeah. Halloween.
Yeah. Instantly.
I'd be giving out ribeyes, grass-fed regenerative ribeyes to all the little kids.
I would come to your house. I wish that feedlots would be non-existent. I wish that they never existed in the first place, but I wish that there is a future where feedlots are eliminated completely from the planet. For our sake, for the animals' sake, for the land's sake, there's just like a rippling effect of the impact of feedlots. So
appreciate that.
Those are good. I'm kind of torn between a few things on mine, but I think I'm going to go with I wish that we could sooner than later see the conversion of 1 billion acres of conventionally farmed and managed land over to regenerative principles. I think doing so would create a ripple effect that would improve the way we feed each other, improve the way various communities are treated and the futures that they have. And I feel that just the externalities from that would be so positive and profound that it would set us on a path that we would all be incredibly enriched and thankful for.
And it would eliminate feedlots for that space.
See, it sort of captures a lot of things.
You really, got it all going here.
You guys co-founded a company together or something. Incredible.
Probably make that one of our goals.
Yeah, that's weird.
Oh my gosh. So good, you guys. Thank you everyone for jumping in and sharing those in the chat. Can't wait to read those as we go on, and thanks for inspiring each other in the meantime. Taylor and Katie and Robbie, thank you so much for joining us today. Huge gratitude for you guys taking the time. I know that you three probably wish that you could invent about 24 extra hours in each day. So I know that your time and attention is directed in so many different areas. So thank you so much for jumping in and being here with the Farmers Footprint community. and telling us a little bit more today. I'm super stoked for this conversation, as I know everyone else is as well. So I want to share really briefly about just our work at Farmers Footprint in case you guys, this is your first time being connected with our organization and you're, avid supporters of Force of Nature. So essentially, we sit at the nexus of aiming to expose the human and environmental impacts of chemical farming and really draw awareness to offering a path forward through regenerative agricultural practices. So it's really no surprise that we have so many synergies with the Force of Nature team and ethos and the work that you guys are doing. So thank you so much. And I think one of our favorite things and one of the ways that we see power in catalyzing change within this regenerative movement is through the theory of change of storytelling. So I think that's something that we're excited to take part in today. Katie and Taylor, you've been featured on our Meet a Farmer series, which you guys can check out on our website. And Anthony, potentially, who's helping co-moderate today, if you want to share that link at some point, that'd be amazing. So yeah, I think there's also so much beauty in just gathering here today and us all being together and creating these deeper spaces to listen and also to share and inspire each other. So thank you all for being here. I want to run over just some really quick housekeeping. So today we're going to jump into some amazing dialogue with the co-founders of Force of Nature, and then we'll transition to questions and answers. So as they're talking, just keep in your mind, curiosities that might arise. Go ahead and just drop those in the chat. We can keep that on kind of like an ongoing rolling basis. And then partway through, we'll transition to answering questions that come from you guys, the community. So as far as like just some really small notes on Zoom best practices, if you guys go to the top 3 right dots on what you guys are seeing as the Force of Nature team screen, you can pin their video and then they'll show up as your whole screen. So you guys can just get that full effect of seeing them speak the entire time. And then also we have the amazing Anthony Corsaro joining us today. He's a part of the Farmers Footprint community, and he's going to be helping out, dropping some links and just kind of co-moderating the session with us. So thanks, Anthony, for jumping in. All right, well, let's kick this off. Without further ado, we, of course, have the incredible trio of social entrepreneurs, regenerative ranchers, and supply chain architects. So Robbie Sansom, you are the CEO of Force of Nature, and I'm going to let you guys hold most of the gravity of explaining your work, but you are doing really incredible work with this regeneratively sourced meat company based in Austin. So I know you guys are going direct to consumer as well as being in retail. I was up in Santa Barbara earlier this year and like popped into the refrigerated section and saw like some produce, like what you guys had, and it was the Force of Nature label, and I got so excited. I like took a picture and like sent it to my boyfriend. It was really fun. But it's amazing. You guys are creating that consumer touch point, and your website is a resource in and of itself of consumer education. So I just think there's so much beauty in the way that you're approaching this work. And it also, I think, is coming pretty strongly from your experience within this space, coming as Katie and Taylor, you being co-founders of Epic Provisions, the meat category defining meat bar snack. And then Robbie, you coming on as the, C-suite COO and CFO for that team as well. So kind of took that project and leveled up. And now we have you here as co-founders of Force of Nature. But I'd love to hear just a little bit, about, again, I'd love to just essentially invite you guys to enter the conversation and share at a high level what you see as the existing situation, the challenges, the problems with, the meat industry. And then how is the Force of Nature brand really stepping in and, filling that gap, I guess is a good way to say it. Like what's unique about Force of Nature's offering that hasn't been done in the meat industry before?
Sure. I'll kind of start off and just give you some background. So a bunch of things that we've done in our lives. We've been friends and we've known each other since we were little kids, all of us. So we grew up together. We competed in a lot of the same sports together. And so we've always just been about healthy lifestyles, recognizing that what we put in our body is the single most important decision that we make every day, bigger than our bodies and our own health, but also the health of the planet and the other inhabitants. And so, Katie and I, after Epic, we started a ranch in Central Texas, and it's a regenerative agriculture field experiment. We partnered with Farmers Footprint. I think we were y'all's first featured farmer, which was just so cool. And so on our ranch, we're really just trying to make decisions and ranch in a way that's in nature's image. So we raise bison, turkeys, broiler chickens, laying chickens, ducks, geese, honeybees, and then at any given point in time, we have 100,000 beating hearts on the ranch, whether it be eastern meadowlarks migrating and nesting on the ground in the winter, or axis deer or other native species. So we really try to create a plate at the dinner table for everyone at our ranch, are all organisms. And one of the big things with the ranch is we bring tons of community. So every weekend we practically have another event out here, and we get people really fired up about this regenerative pathway. We demonstrate it, we explain it, and every single time these events are over, people are sticking around and they say, we want to be a big part of this. We want to participate in it. Where do we start? How do we begin? And the three of us for a really long time just didn't have a great solution for that on a national scale, right? It was kind of like, hey, well, you could order from these couple regenerative suppliers on their website, or, like really anything is better than supporting factory farming. So if you just go to the farmer's market and support someone local, that's probably a step in the right direction. But that really dawned on us that to create this solution, this emerging demand for people who want to spend their purchasing dollars and support a virtuous, better system, well, that national brand needs to be created, because, through entrepreneurship, we always believe that is our biggest opportunity to create large scale change, is market opportunities and market incentives. And right now, if people go to the grocery store all over the country, you don't have a regenerative option, which is absolutely bananas. That should never be the case. And so that was really the genesis and the creation of the brand, was to create that new subcategory and have this dialogue with consumers. Most of the consumers who pick up our package, they think, hey, this is pretty neat. And then they flip it over and they learn about regenerative. It's the first time they've ever heard about this concept. And then they go to the website and they dive a little bit deeper. And so it's planting the seed. But, if we have millions of these packages across the United States, that's millions of imprints every day, someone picking up the product and interacting with it. And so that's kind of how the company started.
Yeah, it's kind of hard to add any more color than that. I think you mentioned that force of nature really is the next evolution. And I think to both of your point, we spent the better part of the last decade on the front lines with, producers, all over the country and all different sorts of ecoregions with all different sorts of, producing all different sorts of animals and products. And definitely are excited about evolving that mission to the other aspect on the front line, which is the consumers, and mobilizing them and engaging them, right? I mean, it was clear to us in these tours that consumers really care. And you see it every day as more and more trends point towards consumers demanding more and better, but the system just isn't really giving them that opportunity to access what they truly believe they're getting and deserve and want, let alone, transparency to the truth behind that food and the systems that they're aligned with. And so, we really are endeavoring with Force of Nature to allow for that access and to create awareness through content, and working with organizations like Farmers Footprint to reach more people and share the truth and put the power and the choice into consumers' hands. And we know that they'll support the system that we've been working on and continue to work on, which is the producer networks and the communities that have been suffering as our agriculture system has sort of left them behind and has gone into the space age or wherever the heck it's headed, AI.
And what we noticed too early on, because we have a lot of friends within the regenerative space, the community, other producers, other ranchers and farmers. And we were asking our friends, well, where is this amazing meat going? Like, where are you guys selling? And all these people, they're fantastic land stewards. They are regenerating their soil and their ecosystem every day, but they're not marketers. And so a lot of these producers that were doing amazing things were selling their livestock to commodity markets, which is a shame, right? They're getting like pennies to the dollar for the actual value of that animal and how they truly raised it. And so that was also a really big, important genesis for Force of Nature. Let's find all these people doing beautiful things and let's tie them together at a national scale to where they are getting a premium for their meat. Their product is getting recognized for the nature in which it was raised. And it's creating this new awareness towards this regenerative space.
And with something that Robbie said with, like regenerating, what do you say, a billion acres? Like with Epic, we were selling 1.5 ounce ounces of meat at a time. And once we started getting asked these questions, like, how can I participate? How can I participate? It's hard to point somebody to just to like, here's 1.5 ounces of meat at a time. You know, like with Force in Nature, we have this huge opportunity to like be selling pounds of meat at a time. And so you think about that impact on land in terms of pounds instead of ounces, which is just like so much more impactful for us when we're trying to think about scale of regenerative. How can we do it faster? Yeah.
So true. So to riff with you guys a little bit, that's something that I hear coming in community as well, is farmers who are wheat farmers growing in a really regenerative way, and then, you know, their wheat just gets sold into kind of the general pile because there's no supply chain for it. There's no access point for it. So it's definitely something that I'm very excited to see you guys pioneering in that sense. Is, you know, even what you're doing within meat, I'm sure there's a playbook and a template there that can start to be kind of extrapolated out to other areas of agriculture. So beautiful. I'd love to, because you guys are talking about like transitioning 1 billion acres and like this shift into, you know, more larger quantities at point of sale and really empowering the consumer to invest in a more scalable way within this work. I really am curious, actually, within that, you know, vision and mission and purpose, like, what is that clear view of the outcome that you want to achieve? And you guys speak to, you know, reclaiming the legacy of meat as well as accelerating the creation of a global regenerative supply chain. So I don't know if that touches at all within that vision and mission and purpose. And I don't know if this is helpful. I know kind of those words sometimes seem ambiguous to me, but one recent definition of vision, mission, and purpose that I really loved was vision being a clear view of the outcome you want to achieve, and mission, what you're doing every single day to achieve that vision. And then overall, like, guiding purpose is like, why do you exist? So happy to riff. Take whatever piece of that you want. That was like so much.
Yeah. You know, I think, you know, to the I wish statements sort of encapsulate some of that, right? You know, feeding others as you wish to be fed, and doing away with these sort of synthetic environments like food systems built to perpetuate a system that, you know, has proven to us time and again it shouldn't be the future and the direction that we head from here, knowing what we know now. You know, I think in order to build a global regenerative supply network, we also, you know, need to convert a lot of land, and the way we convert a lot of land is really mobilizing the full power of the consumer, right? There's no revolution in food without, you know, the consumer. And so, you know, your question kind of ties a lot of those themes together. You know, and I think for us, part of it, and really goes down to the producer communities and ranchers, right? And I think, and Katie touched on this a second ago, you know, for far too long, the food system has been squeezing those people out and off of their land. I think it's 5,000 or 10,000 farms a year that we lose, right? And, you know, the average age is going up, and profits are going down, and input costs are going up. And, you know, I think what we want to do is, as we just discussed, you know, function as a brand that can unite, you know, almost agnostically across the better for and regenerative practice, you know, movement to help facilitate the creation of that supply chain. Ultimately, supply chain meaning connecting consumers to producers who are doing good things and deserve to be rewarded for their effort. Certainly, they deserve to keep their generational wealth viable, and ideally, and certainly their community that they're, you know, their local community deserves to improve and grow and be rewarded for those efforts, as, you know, we all as stakeholders then subsequently benefit. So, you know, we'd like to see, you know, the advancement and acceleration of a global regenerative supply network means better practices, certainly, more farms, more farmers, feeding others as they wish to be fed, being rewarded for it, access for them to reach consumers who are actually consciously able and aware of the food system that they're choosing to support, and doing so at the register. You know, the system that we're in right now is sort of the inverse of that, right? Consumers are completely operating with blinders, and not only that, they're being entirely misled by the industry, right? They're being told what they want to believe, but not being given or shown the truth into the systems that they're supporting. And unlike elections, we don't get to abstain from voting. Every time we buy something, we're voting and we're complicit in whatever system we're supporting. And many consumers, the vast majority of consumers, are actively voting for a system that does not align with their values, and that shouldn't be the case. So that's sort of, in a really broad stroke way how we're trying to facilitate this connection, aka supply chain, between consumers and where their food comes from, and rebuild the relationship that we've had for millennia with our food.
Reclaim the legacy of meat.
Yeah.
I mean, that's specifically, right? So when you look at, we adhere to 5 key principles of soil health, and those are universally adapted, whether you are ranching in Central Texas where we are, or you're in Canada, or, you're in the backyard garden in LA, like these 5 principles apply everywhere. And one of them is you have to have integrated animal impact. So animals are a key part of the regenerative process. They perform so many amazing ecological roles. Animals, unfortunately, have been demonized, in the last, especially accelerated the last 20 years through media, right? As being the cause of desertification, overgrazing, overusage of water. Well, those are all true in that really fucked up feedlot system that Katie wants to make illegal. But there's another way. It's not the animal, it's how the animal has been mismanaged historically. And so reclaiming the legacy of meat is allowing that animal to reach its full biological potential. And that's really important for our brand and important for this conversation.
And I think with the reclaiming the legacy of meat, like there's this added component of like recognizing how nutrient dense meat is and how essential it is for the human body, right? Like, so acknowledging and recognizing that we wouldn't be here today if our ancestors weren't eating meat this whole time. But we've gotten to the point, we've gotten so disconnected with our meat source. The nutritional value of meat has declined, not just because of feedlots, but also because of the decline in nutrient values of just grasses. And so it's about like reclaiming our health back, not just like our bodies, but the health of the soil as well.
So much goodness there. I'm just dropping into the chat for everyone your guys' most recent Instagram post that really speaks to hope. And I love how you guys are talking about the interconnection between soil and how animals play a part in that, and how it impacts the, water functionality and, the health of everything. That interconnectedness, although it can also feel overwhelming at times, I think you guys nailed it when you said that's the source of the hope. Like we're here doing this work day in and day out so that things can change, and acknowledging how they're all connected is really, a starting place for that. So I think also there's such a tendency, I want to kind of like dive into the weeds a little bit, because part of what's so inspiring to me about your guys' story is how you've already built this beautiful supply chain and approached farmers and ranchers and people in your network. And you have such a diversity of produce and of animals that you're working with, between boar and bison and venison and pork and chicken and, cows as well. So I'd love to maybe hear some of those stories, like how, like Robbie, you were explaining to me a really beautiful piece around, how kind of the lines of conservation and ranching start to bleed a little bit when you're looking at invasive species and really being opportunistic around, supply chain. Like how do you work in concert with what's available so that you can, draw the consumer a little bit closer to being a part of the solution?
So how do we ensure that we're aligning with ranchers and land stewards that are doing that? Is that the question?
Yeah, and maybe let's get a little granular with like some examples of ranchers that you guys work with, and how those relationships were formed, and really any direction. Yeah.
Yeah, you give us a lot of credit. Obviously we're standing on the shoulders of giants ourselves. This movement's been around for far longer than the three of us have been, able to work with it and be a part of it. Our background ties to, working with the Savory Institute and other organizations that have done a lot of work globally to advance these ideas and practices and help prove out, anecdotally and empirically through research that this stuff works. And so definitely want to give them credit. And for us, it's just absolute tenacious curiosity and a willingness to go out and travel to the ends of the earth to find the right types of people, right? I think we understand that practice, these agricultural practices and shifts that we want to see are absolutely obtainable. And they aren't even necessarily these massive swings and changes, right? Many of them are subtle, and it's about finding the people that are equally curious and eager to make those changes. And so I think, It's about mindset and finding and aligning with, partners who are motivated for the right reasons. They want to see their land base improve. They want to feed others as they wish to be fed. They want to have something, in the form of a legacy of their land, carry forward and build and be a key member of a community that's doing good things. It's not hard to convince people to do those things when it's also, financially better for them. So, and then I think, it also recognizes that we can't distill the complexity of nature and life on this planet to a series of rudimentary equations, right? I mean, reductionist thinking, I think, has gone absolutely out of control. And I think we have to recognize that context matters, and the way somebody just in the Northeast or Northwest in the United States is going to differ from somebody in the Southeast or Southwest or Central, let alone different continents and so on. And so how do we allow for flexibility and appropriateness as we work with our network of producers and partners of big sizes and little sizes and different regions or eco regions? And we also have, one of our bases for doing that, in addition to visiting anywhere we go and anybody we source from, to have a personal human connection with, validate that mindset, is a land steward index that we've, kind of created that evaluates on a set of criteria, some of which we've already talked about and some of which gets really into the details and the weeds about their practices, but also it's an agreement and a social contract between us and them, that we recognize there really is no destination. That as soon as we think we hit what we envision perfection to look like today, we're going to continue to raise the bar, because we learn and we have an opportunity to grow and improve. And so it's really about continuous improvement and working together to be sensitive to how we are emulating nature and doing the best we can to manage in accordance with it, and do the job of delivering to consumers what they're asking for and what they deserve.
Yeah, and our land steward index that Robert was referring to is like one of the most important pieces of our business, in a sense. It's not just like, it's not like the organic certification where you like hand over a piece of paper and you check some stuff off the box. It's like, we really like, it's more of like a deep dive with that producer. And we want to know them on like a very intimate level, like these are people that are growing food for us, and like the relationship there is just as important as how they're raising their animals. Like Taylor and I have always said, we're never going to raise money from people that we don't want to have lunch with or whatever. And it's sort of like that with producers, like we're not going to be buying into any type of relationship with anybody that we're not going to also like eventually consider some type of friend or family, at some point. There's many producers in our network that we like dearly love at this point, like they've become great friends. But the most exciting part about like working with these people is really the land steward index dives into people on a different level. Like, what are you excited about improving on your farm or ranch next year? Like, tell us about your employees, like who's doing a really great job and why. And, like it just goes deeper than a checklist, right? So I think that's really important aspect of it.
And one really cool kind of like supply chain story that I'll just put out there that's really unique to our context and super close to home is this invasive species that's actually everywhere in the United States at this point in time. They're wild boars. And Texas is kind of like the epicenter of the destruction that this invasive species is causing. They have no natural predators that are in existence anymore. A single sow within a couple of years of her life can have over 100 piglets. And so these numbers are just going unchecked and exploding. I mean, it's gotten to the point where now you can get on a helicopter and just pay a couple $100 for fun and have a military grade machine gun and shoot these things in fields. And it breaks our heart. Those all that nutrition that animal is left in the field unused. It's underutilized. And so this species that's causing $1.5 billion of damage to agricultural lands annually, we have it at our ranch. That they will root. They'll eat pretty much everything you could ever imagine. You cut open the belly of one of these pigs, and looks like spaghetti's coming out, and it's earthworms from rooting. They eat like turkey eggs. I mean, practically anything that they can find, they will eat. And so with Force of Nature, we were able to connect with Texas trappers who are actually, instead of shooting these animals and letting them decompose out in fields, they're actually starting to capture them in cages, and then they'll transport those animals to a certified USDA processing facility where they are harvested under inspection. And so there's an inspector there verifying, validating that the animal is healthy, and then we're able to utilize this abundant resource. It's probably the last land mammal that can be extensively hunted to feed a growing population. And so that it's one of those things like, why is not everyone sharing in the bounties of wild boar? They taste absolutely delicious. They're abundant. They're causing all types of ecological problems. And what better solution than a knife and a fork, right? And so that's just an opportunity for us to partner with a lot of people and create an incentive to remove those animals from land, let agricultural land go back into production without the constant pressure of these animals. And again, you just create a really exciting market opportunity that's better for the planet.
Yes, I'm seeing so many like claps across the screen on that one. It's like permaculture design in action, right? Like use what's available, like observe first, and then create solutions based off of that. So huge applause on that one. That's amazing. So good. It actually kind of sparked this is like such a pure curiosity of mine. So hopefully other people find this interesting as well. But in that same, you see so much going on right now of like zero waste and like cradle to cradle, really trying to like use in an indigenous mindset, like the full spectrum of what it is that's being harvested. I'm really curious about fiber. Like, how do you guys think about fiber and engage with regenerative fiber? Considering that you guys are working with animals and there's like potentially, like resources that come off of that. So yeah, I'm just curious if maybe you guys haven't made it there, aren't interested in that, like if you guys are supporting, what would you suggest or point towards as resources for consumers that they could look to when they're making decisions to support sustainable leather goods or value-added products or like other fiber-based goods?
Who wants to take that one?
I feel like it's like such a passion of yours.
Me?
Yeah.
Right, and that's so true. I mean, Fiber Shed's doing amazing work.
Yeah, I wrote down Fiber Shed. I was like, Fiber Shed's a great resource. Mm-hmm. Like as a company, we are purchasing whole animals from some producers. Some producers are not purchasing whole animals and we're producing meat, but for the ones that we're purchasing whole animals, like we do run into this issue of like, well, now we have a skull and now we have a hide and now we have horn and hoof and all, the whole thing. And so we have a guy especially on our team that is actually working on whole animal utilization for ensuring that we are responsibly either utilizing or selling those things. And so it's in the works. As a company, it's in the works. It's not something that I have like a really good answer for you right now because we're in the process of it. I also feel like I'm obsessed with regenerative fibers. And I feel like Fiber Shed is like one of the only resources that's out there to identify, but also the Savory Institute has a couple partners in the fiber world. Like I know like Eileen Fisher, Timberland is doing some regenerative leather. I don't know if y'all know Koyuchi, but they are like I feel like I'm a brand ambassador now. Like Koyuchi is the best sheet maker in the world. But they make like incredible linens out of regenerative fibers. I forget what the question was.
Yeah, I mean, that's perfect. Literally just resources and kind of, I mean, it was a curiosity, like if you guys are working with animals, exactly that, like what happens to the hooves, what happens to the, the hides, just, it's amazing to hear that there's someone on your team thinking about how to effectively utilize and put that back into a value add for consumers. That's gorgeous.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that we deal with at the ranch a lot too, because we do field harvest here at our ranch, and we end up with like a very tasty animal, but we also end up with the hide and hooves. And we recently started working with a jewelry maker to start making, I wish I was wearing my ring, but to start making jewelry out of the hooves, which is incredible. And it's such a beautiful way of like reflecting on an animal on a daily basis. Like to look down at your hand and be like, I have Poppy's hoof on my finger or whatever. And so, yeah, it's something that we think about all the time.
Yeah, I think it's one of those, it's in it, you know, it kind of goes into like the mechanics of business too, right? There's certain things that you need scale to really do and take advantage of. And then, you know, there's pros and cons of that, right? And so I feel like this is one of those areas where there's such a tremendous opportunity, and it's important that we work on it. You know, we're only scratching the surface. We're not where we want to be, but we're growing rapidly enough where we can be there soon. But many really good operations on their own, whether they be ranches or ranching networks, individually don't have the scale to do it either. And so as we collaborate and work together and utilize this brand to bring that scale and breadth, you know, this is just one example of many where we can drive much more, where the sum of the parts is greater, you know, and we can drive more scale and impact as we are able to collect a larger and larger following again, and enabling them to, you know, further benefit in their own context and, you know, drive success against their own operations and goals.
Amazing. That network effect. Yeah, that's so powerful. Someone also suggested dog treats. So just put a pin in that one for you guys.
What you can do with dog treats, for sure.
So good. Cool. Well, I think maybe one more question for you guys, and then let's transition to Q&A with the community. So put your guys' question hats on and pop all those questions in the chat as we kind of wrap up this final question. But I'm also super curious. This is something, as we were sharing that we were about to do this talk, we got some feedback from, you know, the Farmers Footprint Network. And I think you guys speak so eloquently to it. So I'm going to kind of hit you with a two-part question here. But one, I'd love and would be really intrigued to hear your team's perspective on the true cost of cheap meat. So you guys have talked a lot about this on your platform, and how basically the industry currently places emphasis on driving down the cost of meat at the expense of everything else, you know, including the land and the watersheds, animal welfare, individual health, like the nutrient density that you were speaking to, Katie, as well as like workers' welfare on the land. So I'd love to kind of tee that up and let you guys speak to that. And then kind of the second part of the question is what I know you guys do really well is pointing people towards voting with their dollar for this regenerative meat that really reflects the true cost of what the meat, you know, costs to harvest and create. So also acknowledging that as that's like an incredibly empowering option for those who are able to participate in this way, you know, that seesaw starts to happen as like you inflate and actually create like an authentic view of the cost of the product. It's going to start leaving out certain, you know, communities who can pay for that. So just kind of looking to, you know, have you guys thought about that? And, you know, do you have any people who are like doing or resourcing options for low-income communities and people who don't have the resources to buy the healthiest meat that's really showing that true cost?
Oh man, such a good question.
It's a tough one, right? I know, it's like we want to do both and.
I'll talk for an hour about this one. You know, I think there's two huge parts to the question, in addition to your point about, you know, food deserts or even, you know, lack of education that leads to missed opportunity for folks who need it. I think those two sections are the myth that premium meat is expensive, because it's not, and then a lack of awareness about, to your point, the true cost of food, or when you factor in the externalities and really weigh in near and long-term effects on health and the environment and the myriad of global catastrophes that we're racing towards if we don't change the way we you know, practice agriculture on the third of the surface of the planet, right? And so, you know, on that first point, the myth of meat being expensive, there's just so many examples, right? But I think it goes down to nutrition, you know, like nutrition per calorie and dollars per unit of nutrition, right? Meat is super nutrient dense, okay? You know, it really cannot be compared to anything else in the grocery store. So on a per ounce basis, an ounce of meat is going to serve you far more than anything else in the grocery store. And on a per ounce basis, meat is cheaper. The most expensive meat is cheaper than a Snickers bar or a Hershey bar. Okay, it's cheaper than a bag of potato chips, right? Hershey's roughly like 85 cents an ounce. Multiply that times 16 ounces. A pound of meat costs a fraction of that, right? Even super premium, regenerative, you know, all of the things. So I think that like somehow we have allowed ourselves to be, you know, convinced that meat needs to be cheap compared to everything else in the store. And the reality is it should be where we're directing our dollars. It should be where we are investing for the nutritional benefits of it and the fact that it's less costly than most of the crap you can buy from at a gas station. And I think that, that serves not only the high income individuals, but, people in other deserts and lower, income positions, where if we could create that education and awareness that shift your spending dollars so that on an ounce per ounce, dollar for dollar basis, you're getting what your body needs to be and maintain health. And don't let this price pack architecture nonsense fool you into racing down a path that's going to not nourish you, right? And actually cause you to accumulate, lack of health and toxins and things that will lead to incremental costs down the road as you exhibit, diseases of Western civilization and have a decline in metabolic health, right? And then the other side of the conversation is, the fact that the meat price that you see on the sticker on the shelf is not a reflection of the cost of that, right? There is billions of dollars of government subsidies going into ensuring that that price is lower than it really should be. That higher attribute, better premium regenerative meats don't get the benefit of. There is also no reflection of the costs on, the trillions of dollars of health consequences for eating garbage food. The ecological disasters, from loss of pollinators to dead zones in oceans to acidifications of oceans and the impacts on reefs to waterway issues to the loss of topsoil, the inability for us to be able to feed the future of the planet at the rate that we're desertifying our agriculture bases and food production lands, and the decline of the communities of the people that are actually producing our food for us. It's just, and that list can continue to go on and on and on. That is not represented, right? Like, we are facing a global crisis, and we can't be fooled by an industry that has built itself up entirely on the premise of deceiving us, right? It's just a classic game of misdirection. Look over here, not over here. And that appeal of this cheap price is just a siren song that is not representing our best interest. And then lastly, I think the two can kind of converge, right? Like, as we scale good practice, good regenerative, we bring and we build out that supply chain that we're trying to accelerate the growth of, connect more consumers to more producers, supply and demand starts to do its trick. All of a sudden, we're going to bring the price of even the most premium products down even further, continue to provide more reach and more access to more people in more places and with different individual budgets. But there's just a lot of stuff going on there that I think that we can recharacterize the problem, we can better educate people, and we can work hard to serve one another. Like Taylor said, feed others as you wish to be fed, and that includes people that are different from yourselves.
That was a great answer.
Yeah, that was extensive. I mean, I'll just say, just food for thought to add on to Robbie's beautiful words is, 2/3 of the Earth's usable land surface is in an environmental condition where it's, if you think like on a brittleness scale, it's kind of leans more on the brittleness side. So extremely low humidity, either lack of rainfall or long periods of time without rainfall. Well, 2/3 of the Earth's surface are not suitable for plant-based agriculture. There's billions of people, many of them within poverty, that depend on livestock for their sole source of nutrition, right? You can't grow monocultures or row crops in those communities. And so it's already accessible globally to even some of the most poorest communities that are in dire straits. And so we just need to figure out how to make that accessible to everyone. There's no reason it shouldn't be.
Amazing. Wow, there's so much to, you're so right. I think the first part of your answer that we could talk about this for an hour is accurate. Really, really deep and beautiful things. Part of what you spoke to, I think, is it brings up this image for me of force of nature kind of being the tip of the spear. It's like kind of the work that you're doing creates this incentive for competition and collaboration, but really starts to drive more companies and consumers to just become aware of this as an option. And then you're so right, it's like the Tesla effect, or like, the first Apple computer is so expensive and then everything else starts to like equalize and even out. So I think that, and also what is the true value? I think we also think oftentimes in terms of mitigating harm versus like conventional agriculture, but what's the value that you're bringing to the land that's not only not causing harm, but creating abundance, creating regeneration. And what's the piece there that then, starts to help combat if more people are transitioned 1 billion acres, from an environmental justice standpoint, what does that start to do to climate change and, that trickle effect as it starts to pan out? So thank you guys for that thoughtful answer. That was not an easy one to tackle. All right, heck yeah. Well, let's move on to some CUNY questions, my favorite part of this. So one, especially, I know that Robbie, you are a co-steward of Bison, and Katie and Taylor, you guys are ranchers and land stewards yourselves. We got a question coming in about how do you get started in regenerative ranching land stewardship, and where can you learn to become a producer?
Well, I'll say, Katie and I are first generation land stewards, first generation ranchers. We grew up in the city. I think I saw a question earlier, someone asked what agricultural institutions, colleges are teaching this stuff. And the answer is there's very, very few. If you're on the conventional path going to school to learn about agriculture, well, you're going to learn chemistry and you're going to learn mechanization. You're not going to learn biology. And so coming from, more of a ecological mindset versus a chemistry mindset, and managing land was such an advantage for us, right? It's looking into Mother Nature's wisdom. She figured it out billions of years ago. And so let's put things in place that allow Mother Nature to reach her potential. And so that's kind of how we've learned about this, but we've also had excellent mentorship. There are people that have been doing this much longer than us. They're all over the United States. It's a global movement, as a matter of fact. So you can find a global or a local resource no matter where you are on the planet, because everyone's context, everyone's ecosystem is going to be a little bit different. And then as far as, the cost of land is extremely expensive right now. And so if that's kind of one of the biggest deterrents to getting into agriculture, well, Robbie had mentioned the average age of a rancher farmer, at least in Texas, like 68 years old. More land that's owned is being managed by third parties than the actual people that own that property. And so there's a really big opportunity for someone to get into agriculture and leasing land. We lease some of our neighbors' properties. So we're managing their land, we're managing the grazing, we're managing the wildlife, and we pay a couple $1,000s a year, but we get to utilize that beautiful resource. And so that's a really inexpensive path to getting into being on the land if you can't outright buy land from day one.
Right on. Love that. Great resource. We also, there's like Farmland Finder and some other things like that as well. So definitely I'll try and share some of those resources after the conversation for whoever asked that. I love this one too, because it's kind of narrative, right? You guys you're humanizing meat in so many ways and humanizing, connecting with your farmers. So to kind of like draw a little bit out of your story, someone's really curious about what was the hardest part of starting Force of Nature?
Everything.
I'd say the buyer meetings.
Yeah, that's been rough.
Oh yeah, the commodification.
Yeah,
combating commodification. Yeah,
the narrative. We thought like we created the brand and we're like, this is going to be so easy. We know we're based out of Austin. Well, there's a couple of large natural grocery retailers that are headquartered locally. We're like, we're going to go into all these natural account offices, sit with the primary meat buyers and blow their mind with this idea of regenerative meat.
Because it's so obvious.
It's so obvious. Our presentation was like, you put this on your shelves and you are directly combating climate change. You're creating, you're fixing water cycles, fixing nutrient cycles. This benefits our community. And then
you're serving your customer.
Yeah.
What they want.
And then these people are just like, how much does this cost? And that's all they care about. And we're like, holy shit, we did not anticipate our first year of buyer meetings going like that. But that was the biggest challenge. It's this historical commodification of meat and explaining to people why it's different. And I think consumers get it.
Yeah, and the thing is it's not very hard to explain why Force of Nature is different than any other commodity meat out there. But we've run into barriers where buyers from these huge national natural accounts have said like, well, my consumer already thinks that they're getting grass-fed and blah, blah, blah. So if I bring your product in, they're going to know that we've been lying to them. And we're like, well, so you're not going to bring it in because then you look like a dumbass? Like, I don't understand. So there's this deception that's happening at a retailer level, like an intentional deception that's happening at the retailer level, at the price margins.
I think like we always think of commodification as, you know, price above all else at the expense of all else. And even in the most natural offerings and meat, that seems to prevail. And so like they have said, like Katie and Taylor have said, trying to overcome that has been a challenge. The good news is, despite that pushback, the consumer reception has been overwhelmingly positive. I mean, this is a force that cannot be stopped. Consumers are getting what they want. Most all of these conversations we've had, they've been coming around. It's just, how do we break that conventional thinking that, you know, the way it's been done for the last 30 years is the only way it can be done. It's like, no, everything is changing. And so it's been several years to get there for sure. But yeah, I think that's a good answer.
Biggest challenge for sure.
That just blew my mind, what you guys said. Like, it's like retailers are disincentivized on some level to have your product next to other meat products on the shelf. Wow.
And that's important of a brand, right? You ask most people what brand of meat do they buy? They will kind of look at you weird and be like, wait a minute, I actually don't buy a brand. I know where I buy it, and that's what they'll recite back to you. So you've fully delegated trust and authority to where you're buying your protein, right? At a time when we have more access to more information and a greater desire than ever before to form relationships so that we can align our choices with the values of the organizations that we support, right? And so what is more important than what occupies the majority of our plate for the majority of the meals that we eat in a day, that we spend the majority of our dollars on, to make sure that we have transparency into the values of and the sourcing of, you know, that protein, right? It's just, we don't have that option.
Yeah. Wow. Well, and speaking of options, like the accessibility, I love the idea of, at every single store you walk into, it's just like the norm is a healthy for yourself, healthy for the planet choice like this. So in light of that scalability, a beautiful question came in around, how are you guys shaping your strategy around different sales channels? Like, kind of like what's coming down the pipeline, and what do you see as the vision for how you're balancing direct to consumer versus traditional retail versus food service, to get this product out, to make it everywhere available?
Yeah, I mean, it's pretty simple, really. I mean, again, we're going right back to consumers. We want to offer consumers what they want, where they want it, how they're comfortable getting it, and across a variety of the things they might be looking for. So that's the reason we're on a national scale. It's the reason we're in retail. It's the reason we're direct to consumer. It's the reason we offer a variety of proteins and cuts within those proteins that are expanding rapidly, right? And so the strategy there is make it as easy as possible for consumers to access it. And again, help promote the awareness so they have an understanding of why it's worth supporting and why it's important that they do that.
I love that. I mean, I feel like it's just really trending towards like reducing the gap between consumer and producer. You guys are
you can get into nuances too, right? Where, you know, it's important to have a fan base and an area where you may not have retail distribution. They still have access to it. When you get retail distribution, it probably won't be every product that you offer. So it just starts to get more and more convenient, and more, it works together well.
I love that. Yeah, and speaks to what you guys are doing so well of, like, you know, bridging that and allowing people to vote with their dollar. What about beyond that? You know, someone came in and asked about if you guys have any suggestions, since you've been steeped in this world and this work for so long. What other actions can people take to support regenerative agriculture besides these consumer choices? And they kind of followed up with, I'm curious if there's organized outreach and education efforts or state or local level lobbying to help incentivize small family farmers.
I forgot the first question already.
What other avenues besides consumer choices can folks take in order to promote regenerative growth supply chains?
I feel like educating oneself is the most important thing people can do, and not just like on a headline level, like deep diving, getting out to farms and understanding like what does regenerative look and feel like compared to an organic farm or even compared to a conventional farm. I feel like there's nothing greater than standing on a piece of regenerative soil. Like the birds sound different, the insects sound different, the soil looks different. Like it like feeds your soul in a different way than going to an organic farm or a conventional farm. And I feel like it's not until people like put their feet in the soil that they can really be bought in. And I know that's not realistic for everybody to like go seek out a regenerative farm and put your feet in their soil. But I feel like it takes you to such a different level of understanding. And it takes like your passion to a different level to really want to educate yourself, to want to read all the books from, you know what I'm saying? So long story, I would get long answer short. I guess I was trying to say like education.
Yeah. It's like, don't be a pawn. There are experts that are getting paid tons of money to figure out how to deceive you and tell you what to make you believe a narrative that they're constructing for their own financial reward that is absolutely not in your best interest. And don't let yourself be a victim of that, right? Take the initiative to educate yourself a little bit and assign accountability, right? I mean, there are plenty of examples, and there are organizations in meat that do nothing but tell you all of this beautiful stuff, do nothing to actually demonstrate transparency, don't connect you to the faces and the lands that they're working with, and convince you to keep accepting this promise that they're making you by offering you cheap, free, other incentives, right? Like that should be red flags. If somebody's, as a consumer, if an organization is telling you something and they're offering nothing to back it up or not doing anything to give you the ability to hold them accountable, they're probably full of shit.
I mean, kind of a hot button topic potentially, but I mean, it's flowing in line. A question about like, have you guys had any backlash from industrial ag? Like, how's that interplay been as you've navigated this space?
I think the backlash from big ag would actually be like backlash from fake meat. I feel like I feel like big conventional meat knows that they're shitty, but it's efficient. It's good margins. They can feed the world, whatever, right? But it's really like the fake meat producers of the world, like Impossible Burger or Beyond Burger, that are threatened by the concept of regenerative ag, because it's such a threat to their existence, right? Like yeah.
I mean, I think it's a great example, right? Like they are promoting themselves on a set of solutions that they in no way actually provide a benefit for or demonstrate progress towards, right? All of, whether it's soybeans, whether it's peas, you're promoting industrial row crop, chemical, mechanical warfare on nature to, produce your food. It's perpetuation of the status quo under, putting lipstick on the pig, right? Yeah, they definitely seem to be the most upset because we're actually delivering on the solutions they want to build their brands based on, and that sort of gets them riled up. I think to Katie's point, big meat sort of is so big, they're not even taking note yet.
Yeah, I don't think that we're realistically going to slay big ag. We're not gonna ever shut them out of business, but what we can do is we can show them the light, and we can show them that consumers are looking for something different and change their mindset. Again, this is all about mindset. And so that's the biggest opportunity with big ag, because this has to be scaled. To reach 1 billion acres, we need some of the big players to genuinely adopt these practices and this mindset to help grow this global supply chain. We can't do it without them. And so we have to inspire them, and we have to show them that this is a real solution that consumers are actually looking for.
Yeah, it's again, like nobody's going to produce a product that a consumer won't buy. So the more awareness and the more access that consumers have to demonstrate what they want, more folks will come around producing more of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I didn't even think about, that's amazing. I mean, the expertise there of just like other players in the field and kind of like the competitive nature of, markets. That's so interesting to me. My brain kind of automatically goes, there's a community member who pops up occasionally and speaks to like Jane Goodall's work. Like, how do we draw the spotlight away from the verses and try and like really look at that overlap in the Venn diagram? So, my brain kind of moves towards like, what does it look like if plant-based options are growing regeneratively and we have regenerative meat? Like, is there a forward motion and a place for that to be a part of like whatever solution fits your not one size fits all, but yeah, so good. That's powerful. Good to kind of have some clarity and high resolution there. So thank you guys. Rad. We had another question, and I love that we're getting some kind of coming in on the entrepreneurial piece, but we talked about like what was the hardest thing about starting Force of Nature, and what are some of those challenges that are showing up at this stage of your business? Take us into the board meeting room, the C-suite executive meetings.
So different from the biggest challenge we faced in starting it, like what's our challenge today?
Right now?
Yeah.
There's so many, honestly. It's not an easy path, right?
Yeah.
But if you're taking an easy path in business, then you're just doing something boring that everyone else is doing. So we accept that. We run into these storms like herds of bison.
Yeah, I think it's almost, maybe this is a cop-out answer, I hope not, but there's so much opportunity and there's so much good that can be done, and yet we have limited bandwidth. And so it's, where do we focus our efforts and energies to ensure that, because we're not perfect and the solution is obtainable. And so how do we allow ourselves to continue to pursue that perfection and make that progress, and like choose between 3 really great options and you only get to choose one, and bring on the people and scale the business. And so I think, there's a lot of it, but right now I think the biggest opportunity and challenges is really reaching that consumer and building that content and creating that education and making these ideas understood at scale by the masses, and hopefully aggravating some people and pissing them off and helping them wake up and realize that they've been misled and deceived and they're getting used, and empowering them with that knowledge so that they can step up and serve themselves what they want.
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Like, there's just so much conflicting information out there about like claims and organic versus grass-fed versus regenerative versus, like cage-free even, like there's all these confusing messages that consumers are receiving on a daily basis. And, unless you're like passionate about food, you really kind of don't understand them, and you just kind of let them dictate, like, I'll just pick the one that sounds best or whatever. And regenerative ag is like such a complex topic, and it's so contextual. I think educating people on it is a challenge. Like, how do you simplify something that is so complex, and get people like interested in learning more and
make it easy.
I mean, it's like, you can't really do all these things unless you just take away distractions from people, like, let's just eliminate all your distractions in your life and focus on like the things that actually matter for the future of the human species. And then people would be like, oh, well, I guess I'll learn about regenerative ag instead of Kim Kardashian or whatever, right? So it's just, that's the challenge.
And I'd say too, like one of our challenges right now in this stage of growth, like this is a this is a food revolution. We need communities involved. Well, this is kind of a shitty time in history to like get together as communities. And so that's been really challenging for us. We want to be doing in-store demos. We want to be supporting the product. We want to be cooking this for every single person that interacting with people face to face. And we're unable to do that, which has been torturous for us. So we'll get through that, but it's like, how do you form those intimate personal relationships and connections without putting a face to the name? It sucks.
I feel you. Yeah, I mean, I'm experiencing that as well. It's like such a strange time to educate and gather, and Like just make it real for people, like, and I think you
Be
did.
human.
Huh?
You mean, yeah, like be human.
Yeah, exactly. Like Zoom is not the gathering place. It's the place, not the gatherer, but there's only so much that we can do right now. So it's pretty beautiful, but I'm excited. I know you guys have a history of doing live events, and I think that is a really powerful way to appeal to people and, make it tangible and make it feasible in their lives. So it's beautiful that that's a piece of your strategy is demos. I didn't even think about that, like in retail demos. Amazing. This is super rogue, but it piqued my curiosity as well. So it's a question about with wild caught boar eating anything and everything, like kind of that forager, wild foraging lifestyle. Do you guys test for toxins? And is there really any like toxin testing within meat?
We haven't, I guess there's probably so many different types of ways that you could interpret that and things that you could test for. We definitely done testing on our meat, everything from, the nutrition profile and then what, the other stuff that's required by the plants and the USDA and the processing step. So nothing's jumped out, but we also haven't sent meat to labs and done, a litany of 100 types of different evaluations and tests either. So,
which I think is, like as farmers, ranchers, or whatever, it's one of the most frustrating things to me is this nutrition testing and toxin testing and all these things. It's such an expensive barrier to overcome. Like we wanted to get nutrition testing done as like a baseline, sort of like how we're doing soil sample testing, as you have to have a baseline so you can improve year over year. We're doing that with meat too, right? Like if your soil is improving, your nutritional value of your animal should also be improving year over year. It's like $2,000 to get like a simple like vitamin A, vitamin D, iron profile, which is unobtainable like at scale, right? So if we were testing every single animal that came off of our land, or every single animal that came,
multiple cuts, multiple tests, multiple times a year.
It's like, how do we? And I know that sounds ridiculous, because $2,000 is $2,000, but I'm like, how do we make that a scalable and affordable endeavor? Because that's like a super important piece of the equation, right? Like it's human health, it's animal health, it's soil health, it's all the things. And so like, if we can't test for that affordably, like how do we move on? I don't know. I feel frustrated with that.
It's interesting though. The wild boar, it is a true wild caught animal. So, like you could go pretty deep down this rabbit hole, but it's like, you think about venison or elk or waterfowl or upland game birds. Those are also wild animals that people hunt. And even though they're perceived as like the top tier, premium health, these things have been untainted. Well, there's nothing stopping, all those animals from eating GMO corn coming out of a feeder for every single meal of the day. And so we do have to be careful. We don't make any claims about what the animal is or isn't eating with that wild boar product, which is impossible to guarantee that. You just have to know it is a wild animal. So it's unique in that capacity. But at the USDA plant level, there was an inspector looking at the carcass of every single animal. And there's key vital organs that these inspectors go to immediately. And they look for any kind of signs of disease, of malnourishment, where the animal is not fit for human consumption, and all those animals get rejected. And so they'll find, like very, very rarely, and this happens with even domesticated animals like cattle and goats and sheep, but sometimes there will be something demonstrating or indicating there's a problem with the liver of the animal. Well, that animal is thereby eliminated from the human supply chain. So it's the same rigors that all meat is inspected and passed through the USDA process with our wild boar.
So interesting. I did not know any of that. That's so amazing. I feel like there's probably quite a few people on the call who maybe didn't have that insight. So, and Katie, I feel you. I think that's kind of ties into Robbie, what you were saying earlier around if the consumer demands it, like it will drive the scalability. So who knows, in 20 years, there could be processing or auditing or testing facilities, and that should be a part of the nodal intervention of co-ops and, a piece of, any sort of production.
Can you imagine if we were paying for nutrition as opposed to just paying for like a product, right? Like if you could measure the nutrition, like if you walked up to an apple and you're able to like measure the nutritional value of that apple, wouldn't you pay more for it than the apple right next to it that had no nutritional value and was just full of carbohydrates and sugars? You know, so I feel like there's like such huge opportunity there in terms of, you know, like conceptualizing, going back to this idea of like the premium price of meat. You would always be willing to pay more for something that was more nutritionally dense.
100%. Yeah, that's been a huge topic that's come up in conversation, especially with Dan Kittredge's work and Elaine just being the soil science side around like how that so closely flows up to nutrition density and nutrition bioavailability. Huge hot topic. Seems like it's impacting your guys' work as well. So dig that you brought that to light. Thank you. Okay, Rad. Well, we are wrapping up. I can't believe how quickly this time passed. But I'd love to just kind of give you guys the opportunity to share anything, either, you know, with the group, you know, like one final message that you'd like to imprint on them as they walk away from this session, if anything comes to mind.
I got a good one.
Okay.
This is kind of one that we tell, so we have all those ranch events, and this is kind of like, this is your battle cry for 2021, okay? So true story. Bison are really unique, and when a herd of bison is challenged by a storm. So here's my storm cell, right? Say it's a blue northern, there's hail coming, temperature is about to drop 20, 30 degrees, there's thunder, there's lightning. Here's my little herd of bison grazing on regenerating soils. And when they see this storm coming on them, bison are unique in that they will charge, they'll accelerate and stampede into a storm. Or every other type of domesticated livestock, right when that storm hits them, they say, oh shit. And then they turn around and they start running away from the storm, but they're trapped in the storm because the storm's going with them. So be a bison in 2021. Face the storm head on, face your fears, face your challenges. You're going to minimize your own distress. You're going to maximize your own comfort after you break through that. So be a bison, charge into the storm, run into the storm.
I think one of our themes, so we do like company themes or whatever, you know, as like a joining forces, team bonding thing. And our theme for this year is to disobey. And I feel like this is sort of what this movement represents in general, is like this idea of not following convention, not doing exactly what you're told, seeking out more information, educating yourself, making the best choices for you and your family, and not just like in agriculture, but like in your own health and the health of your family, and the health of the environment.
Yeah, I think I just want to take a moment to thank everybody that's on the call, right? I mean, I think,
so difficult.
Yeah, well, you know, we wouldn't we wouldn't be able to do what we endeavor to do and wouldn't have made the progress that we've already made if it wasn't for people like the folks on this call, right? Ranchers and land stewards that are willing to defy the system and push their comfort zone and explore new and innovative ways of, you know, serving themselves and their communities and people and individuals that take in their food, or consumers who are willing to learn more and challenge their own convictions and be, you know, thought leaders and mavens and early adopters. I mean, it is through people like the folks on this meeting or in this call that influence happens and these messages expand and these movements grow. And so if we really want to see a regenerative revolution, it isn't us, it's through everybody else on the other end of the screen here. And so thanks for taking the time to be a part of the solution.
Wow, thank you. I'm so happy that there's all three of you, because I feel like each one of those was so needed. Bison and huge thanks. Well, on that note, I mean, I think one of the most important and beautiful parts, Robbie, that you just touched on is the power of community and like consistently engaging with these conversations. So if at any point this feels alive for you, we host conversations, Farmside Chats with farmers, land stewards on an ongoing basis on our community. So you can catch all the information there at community.farmersfootprint.us. And, you know, we're just storytelling out here. That's one of the most beautiful things. It's so simple and yet also so complicated, but so necessary. So please definitely check us out, follow along, and we would love to have you and continue engaging in these important conversations. And you're already doing so much work just by listening. I think that's another huge piece that I've been working on and trying to really show up for, is like, how do we listen more effectively before we speak, before we act, and move from that place of shifting belief and informing our thoughts and our words and our actions. So thank you guys for being a part of that. And then additionally, huge thanks to you three. Katie and Taylor and Robbie, co-founders of Force of Nature. You guys are stewarding so much beautiful change in the world, and you're so many places all at once. And I just can't thank you enough for centering the thesis of your work around building consumers, pathways to really support a better world and like dream themselves into that future. We hear that so much, like, okay, I'm inspired, I'm informed, and what do I do now? And that's really where the barrier butts up for a lot of folks. They don't have time and space in their lives to create that call to action. So you guys just make it so fingertips. And I think that is pivotal, and we need so much more of the goodness that you guys are putting out into the world. So huge thanks. This was a blast. Thank you so much. And for everyone else, we are staying on for another 30 minutes or so, and we're gonna pop into a little bit of a shift, a community roundtable. So everyone will come off mute and we can just, have that generative conversation, talk through some of those questions. I think that's one of the beautiful things about gatherings like this. Right now, the power dynamics of this gathering, a majority of us are on mute, but there's such deep wisdom residing in each of your guys' Zoom screens. And I'd love to just create some space and bring that out and allow that opportunity to emerge. So whoever has time and availability, please stick around with us. And at this time, I'd just love to thank you guys, Force of Nature, and yeah, appreciate you guys coming out. Thanks for sharing your space.
Thank you,
Bye,
guys.
everyone.
All right, thank you again.
Awesome. Cool, guys. So let me switch around the functionality so that everyone can unmute themselves. Okay, I think you guys should be able to unmute yourselves now. Maybe Antonio, looks like you're able to. I don't know if we can hear you. Oh, we got you. Amazing. Cool. Well, I love this. I'd love to just really open up the space to anyone. We still have a really incredible crew here, about 35 plus of us. And like I just mentioned, like that's part of the beauty of these sessions is I've been to so many webinars or virtual summits in the past year, and you're so inspired, you're so jazzed up, and then you just go off into the ether and continue on with your life, and maybe catch the replay in your email and send it to a loved one so that they can catch a fringe of that excitement or knowledge. But we're all here, we all care, we're all, impacted on some level, probably something either just resonated with us or, sparked some form of curiosity. So I'd love to just kind of ask the group, like, what came up for you? Like, did you learn anything in that session? Do you feel like you're moving towards, looking for really anything? Like, I would just love to hear what do you guys think? What was alive for you? Or are you left with lingering questions? And I know it's a lot to ask to speak in front of a big crew. So
I can start with something, Tori.
Would love to. Thank you. Yeah.
So I can just tell you from personally working with those same grocery buyers that they talked about at the retail level. What we can do on top of just vote with our dollar is put pressure on our retailers, whether that be a big chain, if you shop at a big chain retailer, or that be your local co-op or any kind of store that you buy food from. They're going to see what you spend your money on, but also you should be putting pressure on them to carry regenerative products and asking for those things, because that's what gets to those buyers, and that's what convinces them to put those products on the shelf and ultimately scale this thing, which we all know that we need to happen.
Super interesting. So would you suggest people just go to their local grocery store and, request?
Yeah, absolutely. That's really the most effective way. Send an email or just go up to the store manager at the store and just say, hey, I'd like to buy regenerative meat. I'd like to buy regenerative XYZ. Do you guys carry anything? If you don't, I'd love for you to start carrying it. It's really that simple. And the stores are actually very well trained to send that communication upward, especially if it's a bigger chain, because they don't want to lose, obviously customers to competitors.
Wow. Amazing. Thank you for that. Yeah, I know you worked in that space too, so huge expertise there. Antonio, what's going on?
Hi, my name's Gabriel. If that's okay, I'd love to piggyback off of something he just said when it comes to going to stores to request regenerative meat and practices like that.
Yes, Gabriel, jump in, please.
Yeah, real quick, I worked in packaging for 14 years. I actually worked with Taylor, Katie, and Robbie for a long time. When you go to a store, it's always a really good idea, especially for something like regenerative that isn't super mainstream, to have a brand that you can recommend. You know, store managers, sometimes they're read in, sometimes they're really not. So if you just say regenerative meat, they might look at you sideways and just carry on with their day. But requesting something specific like force of nature gives them something to grapple with and move forward with. It's something else someone asked earlier on about how do you get into ranching and land being a huge barrier. The USDA actually offers loans for first-time buyers at like 3.5% down in specifically rural areas. It's just like an FFA first-time buyer's loan. So that's like a good way to look into it.
That's amazing. Gabriel, if you have a link or anything that you would want to share in the chat, or if you're on mobile right now, maybe afterwards in the event comments, that would be really amazing. Huge resource to so many folks.
I'll see what I can dig up real quick.
Awesome. Thanks. Yeah, we get a ton of questions around that, like folks who are inspired, and you know, it's such like an appealing way of life to just like live in more harmony with the land. So really dig you bringing that forward.
You can start with just an acre. You don't have to have a whole ranch.
Yeah, exactly. Start with one tomato plant.
Yep.
So good. Awesome. Rory, would you like to jump in? I think.
Hello?
Yeah.
Hello? Can you guys hear me okay?
Yeah, is this Corey or Rory?
Corey.
Hey, Corey. We've got Corey and Rory.
Oh. I can go first. I don't know.
Sounds great. Yeah, what's going on?
Sorry, I work in the dark. Hello, everybody. Yeah, my question was, I've been ordering Force of Nature for a long time, supporting them, and the big question, a good thing to hear is that I live in Austin, so it's very close to Fredericksburg. So when you order from Force of Nature, I wasn't always sure I wanted to order the bison from their actual ranch here. But when you go to Force of Nature, you realize, oh, it came from, anyway, so they totally answer those questions. I appreciate that, because I realize they're putting forth, you know, this community, and you know that it's coming from a regenerative place, which is awesome. But not knowing, oh, it doesn't come from Texas. You know, I live, whatever it is, 100 miles. And it'll be nice to know. But yeah, like our store is HEB here in Texas. And if we're able to tell HEB, yes, please order Force of Nature, and they supply it, that'd be much easier. But, you know, like everybody else, I just continue to order online. I hunt a lot of deer. I eat mostly what I hunt already. So I just supplement with a lot of their products, which they do the ancestral blends, and it just tastes amazing. But yeah, if there's a network where we know, okay, who else is regenerative, like they said, this bigger community, if you just wanted to support someone closer to you that's regenerative, knowing where that list lives would be nice. And if it already is somewhere, then, you know, sorry, I missed that, and just let us all know. But, you know, thank you for putting this together. I appreciate it a lot. So thank you.
Right on, Corey. Yeah, I would actually say I would reach out to them over email. I just dropped that into the chat, and I'll include all that information in the comment section on the event as well. But I get the feeling that probably, I forget what they called it, but kind of like that ledger of their, you know, ranchers and regenerative land stewards that they work with. I have a feeling they probably keep that close, but I was listening to a podcast with Robbie, and he was saying that you know, they've never had people since bringing them on kind of like drop out of that, because they just have such good working relationships. But oftentimes a lot of the ranchers will also, you know, it's not like their only person that they're selling to is Force of Nature. So I think there probably could definitely be room if you wanted to reach out to them and just explain that you really want to support local and that's like a priority to you. See what they say.
Sure. Cool. Thank you.
Yeah, right on. And then Rory, what's going on?
Hey, glad to have good information here today. I'm up in the interior of British Columbia in Canada, and kind of new to this whole thing. I've been following Dr. Zach Bush a bit and started to realize what the carbon imprint or unimprint of regenerative farming is. And I wanted to know if anybody's got information on maybe associations or people that I could deal with in Canada, particularly in Western Canada. I spent quite a bit of time in the transportation industry hauling fertilizer to a lot of different farms and places in Western Canada. So I have kind of a little bit of influence and a place to work and want to start educating people. I just wondered if anybody's got information on a Canadian organization. So I'll leave that to the panel, throw anything in if they got it, and I'll let someone else come on. Thank you.
Yeah, definitely. If you want to, Rory, a good place, I mean, there's a few of us on this call, but we have, a couple thousand in the online community. So if you ever wanted to hop in there, you don't even have to sign up if it's not ideal for you, but you can just ask that question and then kind of like come back and check in. Yeah, looks like Anthony just shared Savory Network as well. So good. Antonio, what's alive for you? What's going on? I think I've asked you to unmute. Sorry guys, the functionality on Zoom is being a little silly. You should be able to unmute yourselves, but sometimes it goes a little wonky and doesn't let it happen, so. Antonio, I don't know if we can hear you. Okay, never mind. Sorry, your hand's up. Okay, all good. If anyone else, Guy, it looks like you might be off mute. I don't know if there's anything that you wanted to jump in and share, but.
I'm in Canada also. Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we got you.
You got me. Okay. This is my first call and I just got here a half hour late.
All good. Welcome. What'd you think?
Oh, bliss. It's just wonderful. Beautiful to see this happening and young faces in farming. It's great. I'm in Nova Scotia, and I'm doing a food forest with a glamping together, and just getting it started. So, if I have an opportunity, if anyone wants to come to Nova Scotia and have a room in a nice old house from the 1840s and work on a permaculture for a while, then you can find me at sabbaticalhomes.com.
Love that. Yeah, can you drop the link in the chat maybe, or in the comments in the event afterwards?
Yeah. So yeah, I'm so glad to find this. I've followed Zach recently. I just discovered him and just was listening to his thing today, his 2 hours about living and dying. Great stuff he has. So I'll try and figure out how to do this on the chat. Yeah, put my link in there.
Right on.
Thank you.
Yeah, totally. Thanks for jumping in, and glad you're here. I love that you are, I think you said you're doing a food forest.
Food forest, yeah. I have another home in Tucson, Arizona.
So good. Well, and the glamping piece, I think that agritourism is such a beautiful, I'd love to actually get some stories of agritourism kind of like a little more well known. So thanks for bringing that up, because it's such an access point for folks.
That's a new word for me, agritourism.
Yeah, exactly. It's a good one.
I'm going to use it.
Co-opt it. Take it away. So good. Well, I mean, Derek, do you want to, sorry guys, this Zoom functionality. Okay, cool. Welcome.
Hey, everybody. Thanks for this forum. This is really great. The Farmer's Footprint has been absolutely awesome. And I came to it through Zach Bush last March when he did the food summit with Ocean Robbins. So that's how I found Zach Bush, and that's how I found Farmer's Footprint. And so I live in Loudoun County, Virginia, and just like the gentleman just said, agro tours. I went on an agro tour 2 weeks ago, and I've been aware of the soil regeneration movement, but I'm also learning more about that too. What they spoke about earlier is huge. It's absolutely huge because indigenous people were doing zero waste for a long time. Indigenous cultures around the world, and when these folks came over and said, "Nope, you're going to do it this way," this is what we're up against now. So I'm with that lady Kathleen who said we just need to do it, and we need to do it together. You know, Farmers Footprint is such a diverse website, so the answers are right there, right? We just have to do it in our respective locations, and understand that all of us are involved in some way or another. So it's really a good thing, really a good thing. So thanks, Tori, and just know that I'm working in my space. I'm working in my sphere of influence, and I'm learning a lot, All right, y'all.
Amazing, Derek. Thank you for sharing that. It's so special. We've had a few people pop up recently who are really igniting that on a personal and team level. Exactly what you just said. Like, we don't all need to be farmers and land stewards. Like, we can be working in tech, we can be a nurse, we can be a mom, you know, and every single one of us has a capacity to, if we care about something, leverage the skill sets and capacities that we have for it to be in advocacy and service of other things that we care about. So I just love that. Like, we had an artist come on and she's doing 100 days in a row of art for, she's making it out of soil. It's like this beautiful, like, abstract ceramic piece, and she's selling them and donating the proceeds to Farmers Footprint. And we have another community member who does yoga once a month, like donation-based classes, and like donates those proceeds. It's just, I love that. Like, and it doesn't even have to be donations, but even just talking to people, talking to your family about it, that sphere of influence just grows, exactly like the Force of Nature team was talking about. So dig that.
Right. One last thing, Tori, do we just post the things that we're doing in my county here? How do we let you all know, like, we're doing things, or, how do we stay in touch so that we just remain this, synchronous, if you will?
Totally. Yeah, well, I'd really recommend jumping into the online community, which I'll just post right here. So it's, if you haven't had a chance to jump in there, if you RSVP'd to this event, it's on that same platform.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So just go there, and there's a whole, it's kind of like a private Facebook group. So there's like a news feed, and you can like do quick posts or like longer form articles or share pictures and stuff. Keep us updated. I love, and everyone does. I think, when you put a little of yourself out there, you never know what comes back. And, it's a small but really quickly, rapidly growing group. And it's just amazing what happens when you have everyone kind of shining that spotlight on this one topic, and just like so collaborative. They just want to help each other. Everyone's in here like peer-to-peer learning and sharing resources. So yeah, keep us updated, whatever that looks like to you. Yeah, right on. Thanks so much. Antonio, I think that you wanted to jump in too.
Yeah, let's try this now. Is this working?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Hallelujah. I think my phone or my headphone jack pulled slightly out of the portal, so I could hear audio, but anyway, technical difficulties. I just, what really struck me in hearing that presentation from the Force of Nature team is just how potent social entrepreneurship can be as a force for, as a force for good. I remember listening to these guys give a keynote at the Savory Global launch in, I think it was 2016, and to see how much they've evolved, and even I think that was before they bought their ranch, if I'm not mistaken. A couple things came up for me really powerfully, and I think this is really important to the regenerative narrative. And as someone on kind of more the agroforestry side of the equation, one shorthand that's really a simple question or thought exercise that we can ask ourselves is, what did native or indigenous people do before colonization, before industrialization. And when you look, when you look at the ecological landscape of most of North America, it was dominated by megafauna. So it only makes sense. And Tori, you've heard me kind of preach this with my my being such a strong proponent of the perennialization of the food supply. It's important to remember that holistically managed livestock is a form of perennialization. That perennial pastures provide nutrient dense source of food 12 months out of the year. And for most of North America, there are very few regions, particularly I'm in Western Colorado right now, when I'm not in the wet tropics in Costa Rica. And there are really no sustainable cereal grain crops for this half of the country. And I would argue that even where cereal grain monoculture is possible, even when it's done organically, it's incredibly destructive. And I just wanted to kind of piggyback off of the Force of Nature work in terms of the importance of opening up these ecological corridors. I mean, in a pristine, perfect, we'd be talking about rewilding North American landscapes, maybe bringing back the cattle drive and having livestock in the commons right alongside the bison, deer, and the buffalo, or deer and the antelope as well. So again, another opportunity to make a plug for perennial food systems that are soil stable and provide habitat and restore degraded landscapes. With regard to talking to where to source food like this, I can't advocate strongly enough for. I think always our first choice should be to go farmer direct. There will be in the not too distant future, we will have really potent metrics for what we call EOVs, or ecological outcome verification, and these are data points that can track from farm to table, even things like carbon footprint. So it may be, and this may seem counterintuitive at the moment, but it may be for someone that doesn't have a local supply of regenerative grass-fed meat, let's say in the Midwest, it may be significantly lower in terms of a carbon footprint to purchase from Force of Nature and have that delivered to your doorstep. So that's an important thing to consider, and that data will be more verifiable in the very near future. So there's just a couple of things I wanted to add to the conversation. Thank you, Tori, and thanks for hosting this. This was really wonderful presentation.
Yeah, they rocked it. Thanks. I mean, honestly, this is so meant to be like a riff. So does anyone have any thoughts off of what Antonio just said? All good. Clark, I know you got your hand up. Yeah. I mean, to Clark, sorry, I think Zoom is still doing this thing where you guys can't unmute. I'm so sorry, Clark, if you want to jump in. I think I just asked you. Is it working? And now we got.
Here it is. So again, thank you to add on. So I split my time for now between New York City and LA primarily, some different parts of California. But when I'm in New York City, I want to feel like I'm contributing in a way that feels good and is part of this larger picture. So, for example, I know of the initiative or the facility that went up, the project in Irvine, I think it was, where it was a 3,000 square foot parking structure that is now.
Yeah, I'll drop the link. It's called Allegria Farms. They grow in like these raised beds on wheels, and they put all of their soil and grow out of, like, they call them socks boxes. So it's like a tube sock filled with soil that they grow out of. I'll drop a link. You guys allowed, but keep rolling.
So do you know of any initiatives like that or projects like that here in the city or in any of the boroughs? Obviously we have rooftop artisan culture in Brooklyn, different parts of Brooklyn and stuff like that, happening more and more. But I'm not sure of any projects similar to the one Allegra, here in the city or in the immediate area. So I'd love to be able to know how I can get involved in one, with one, in the development of one, something like that.
Amazing. Yeah, I'll take a note and we can post about that in the community. I don't know of any right off the top of my head, except maybe Brooklyn Grange.
Okay.
Let me see if I can find them and share that with you. But just, yeah, I would dive deep on like urban farming. And then also there's probably, you know, upstate New York has a lot of rural areas. So there's also the possibility of, you know, doing a CSA box, and they do kind of like scalable drop shipping or like drop CSAs in the city. And one of those is Essex Farm, ESSEX Farm. So they're fully regenerative. They have a really cool model too. Their whole model is basically like, how do you set up, like basically create like your CSA program as like an extension of the farm family, so that in theory, someone could subscribe to the CSA and never have to go to the grocery store again. So there's like maple syrup, there's grain, there's meat, dairy, eggs, all these things. So check them out. That's definitely one option. We're working with them on a small side project right now they're donating CSA boxes, and we're kind of like connecting them with community fridges in New York and urban, I think in Brooklyn or Bronx maybe. So yeah, just maybe that's an option too, is like maybe it's not in the city being grown, but what's the potential, you know, footprint and or like benefit of it being close, and then, you know, if it's scalable, there's enough of demand in the city, they're already coming in.
Cool. I love the idea, the added idea or the benefit of that project, you know, providing employment opportunities and education, and not only the produce and, you know, products that are coming out of that, but in Irvine, but yeah, just to keep things rolling in that direction, or to be able to provide those options for people here in the city that might not, you know, have those options available to them, whether it's because of financial or other, you know, limitations.
Mm-hmm. So with you. Yeah, it's something that I feel like I've been realizing a fair amount. And Antonio, you spoke to this, just the, you know, the equity component of this isn't a new concept, and there's certain, you know, stakeholders who are being not asked the questions, and also, you know, not being involved in the solutions or conversations. So I did actually want to just point to, this isn't an event that we're hosting, but it's being put on by Food Solutions New England. And if that is striking a chord for anyone, like, you know, that racial equity piece within regenerative agriculture, and also just kind of like that decolonization mindset. This is a 21-day challenge where you get a daily email, and so far it's been phenomenal. It started on Monday, and the few folks that we're doing it as a team, and then also the few folks in the community who are doing it, like, people are blown away already with just the resources. And it's tough. It's not like easy work. It's definitely confronting and kind of puts a mirror up in front of you, but I think so important. And I've heard so many reverberations from this community of people who want to understand a little bit more about that, because it's in our DNA. If you care in some ways about regenerative agriculture, you want to help your own health, you're trying to look outside in your communities and really, you know, create that thriving abundance everywhere. And I think it just kind of like expands that circle of awareness, just a couple steps maybe outside of, you know, what we can see and touch and feel that's immediately in front of us, and see some of those like structural foundational underlays that are, you know, exactly what we talked about in the beginning, like leaving certain groups out of the equation. So dig that. Does anyone else have anything that they want to pop in with? If not, I'll close out the space and just thank you guys for coming and being a part of this. Derek, what's going on? I thought you were waving us out.
One thing that I've learned is you talk about this racial business, right? And one thing that helped me transform was I didn't know that race did not exist prior to the 1700s, meaning most people were geographically associated with, you know, Nordic, Scythian, Celtic, Germanic, Moorish, you know, all these different regional lands. But it wasn't until Bacon's Rebellion here in Virginia they said that was a rebellion that was most diverse, right? I mean, most diverse, and it was against the bourgeoisie. Well, you know, they socially engineered this race thing. It didn't exist until they said we can't have this rebellion anymore. But look at what we're doing right now. We're coming together and rebelling against this other energy that we're going against. But I'm telling you, the awareness for me was I did grow up in Brooklyn, and we were like, those are Italians and these are the Jews, these are all these folks right here. But when you get above that notion, like, wait a minute, we're all here and we're not doing our purpose. We're fighting amongst each other, and we're not doing our purpose, and we're not serving the earth. We're not doing all that stuff. And I said, oh shit, this is bullshit. Like this is total bullshit, this whole race thing. But folks don't get it. You know, my brother, this is my Antonio's my cousin, or whatever you want, you're my cousin, Tori. So this race thing was BS foisted on us to keep us from being together and coming after these folks who were doing some nefarious activities. So I just wanted to say that I've come to the awareness. There's two books, Tori. One is called The History of White People, which I did a double take. I said, what? And then the other one was The Invention of the White Race, and then White Trash. There's another book called White Trash. Those three books helped me say, this is bullshit. This is straight bullshit. And then I said, we got work to do. We get past that shit. It's bullshit. We got work to do. So that's all I want to add. That's all I want to add.
Thank you. Yeah, Antonio, what's going on? Let's see.
Yeah.
I think he's trying to unmute. I mean, I'd love to just thank you, Derek, for sharing that. I mean,
I'll put it in chat.
Yeah, please put the books in the chat. It's like challenging to talk about and like look at that in ourselves. But I think what you just said is pointing exactly to what, you know, the Force of Nature team was talking about, like recognizing that interconnectedness and seeing that as like, you know, not versus, but like, and like, what are the commonalities and how do we move from that place of collaboration? But a piece of that to even get to that point is to acknowledge what's here. Like we can't just bury our head in the sand and move in that way. So yeah, just an invitation. Appreciate you sharing resources, always open to that. I love that Regeneration and the regenerative movement is apolitical and a-religious, and you know, it doesn't see color. There's no racial, it's nature, right? Like we're just growing food and working with animals. So I think it's such a beautiful universal access point for us to enter into these conversations. So on that note, thank you guys so much for being here. It really, really means so much that you are, not only for yourselves, but for each other. We wouldn't have these events if, you know, no one showed up, obviously. So thank you guys so much. And yeah, huge thanks. So hope to see you guys back for another one soon. We don't have any Farmsides on the schedule yet, but aiming to get one set up for the end of this month. So keep a close eye on that events page in Mighty Networks and the Farmers Footprint community. And beyond that, go have an amazing Wednesday. You guys brought a smile to my face. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks again.